How you guys doing this morning? So I've got some objectives today. So one of my objectives is to hook up my sending unit to my 1973, which we'll go do that in a minute, where I'll tell you where my best secret is taking all sorts of photos because it helps me later on. I'm pretty terrible at it, but normally when I do it, it actually helps me out. And then my second goal is going to be putting together a piece for my cat, which is a track adjuster, which is just a hydraulic rod basically, but instead of powered by hydraulics, it's powered by grease, which it's all rusted apart. So we'll go take care of that second. Well, wish me luck with the 1973. Well, I'm in the 1973, and I'm going to be going through some of my photos that I have on my phone, because I rebuilt the whole wiring harness in this truck about a year and a half ago. So I do have some photos if I go back in my camera roll, which that's what I'm doing. So I'm going back to last winter when I had the whole wiring harness out on the actual back before I had a flatbed and all. Which, if you guys are actually interested, I'll do a whole video on the progress of the truck and do a little background music, some audio, something. But so I knew I was going to have this problem earlier, so to take out the gauge cluster. I don't have all the finishing touches in here, but it's just a couple screws, but it's kind of a pain to take it out, which I hope I don't, because it is a pain. And this truck originally was a propane version, an LP, so it ran on liquid propane. So this is not the original gauge cluster, so I'm not entirely sure if the sending unit wire only is in the gauge cluster, if it's actually in the wiring harness down to the fuse box, or if it goes out the fuse box into the firewall. So that's what I'm going to be looking for. So originally when I did this restoration, I repainted my gauge cluster, so I had it all tore apart. So I had a list of what each wire ran to. I just have to find it. Okay, I found some of the photos. So here is a photo of my wiring harness, because I took out the old fuse box and put in a new fuse box, which I'll throw some other photos up, so that way you guys can actually see it better. But my best kept secret, even though I'm terrible at it, is take photos of everything as you go along, as you do it. So, like, here's the fuse box, where I made the fuse box into, well, the back of it at least, so, because I can't see the back of the fuse box now. But I've got some other photos of the actual plug that goes to the back of the wire, the gauge cluster. And like, here's a photo of the back of the gauge cluster, which if I chase out the wire, I know exactly what wire it is, so it should be the top one on the right, which if I go to the photo I have of the plug, it should be number 18, a little brown wire. So as long as I chase that little brown wire out to the firewall, I should be able to go easy enough, but I might have to pull the gauge cluster and make sure I'm right on that if it isn't working. Because I've got my sending unit in the tank, in the back of the truck, because I custom made my tank, which I'll throw a little photo up here. But again, like I said, my best kept secret is taking photos. Terrible at taking photos. So I don't have very many good photos of it, but I painted it black, it's underneath the box, and then I put a magnetic float in it. So what a magnetic float is, it's a rod which has magnet sensors in it, and then a little round magnet that slides up and down the rod, which is your float, to tell you how full the tank is, which is supposed to be the most accurate one there is. So we'll see if that's close or not, because I've got a 54-gallon tank. I don't want to fill it all the way, because to get my 54 gallons of capacity, I had to have it go right up to the top of the flatbed, and that means it's level with the fill neck, so it's almost impossible to fill. And also, if I bring it up all the way, that means that if I ever open up the fill cap when I'm on a side or hillside, or when it is completely full, I could have fuel dumping out. So I want to be able to actually monitor when I'm filling the truck to make sure I'm getting right to full and then stopping, so that way I can still monitor my fuel economy, because I believe I'm getting about 12 to 15 miles to the gallon, depending on what I'm doing. And because I had it running on propane last month and the month before that, working out at the rat ranch, for one of my friends, actually my boss. He was my old teacher, and we were logging, which I can throw some photos of that up too. And so she was pulling the hill every day, and I was getting about 7 miles to the gallon on propane, which because propane's cheaper, it kind of equaled out. But I'm gonna try it on gas now. So I built my own tank. So I'm gonna put boxes on the side of the truck later. Well, see if I can chase this wire down. Well, I'm sorry if the audio is hard to hear or if water gets on the lens. I've got you guys underneath my hood, but mind the wires because I'm still not done wiring everything up. So whenever I run a wiring harness, but whenever I run it, I run at least 2 or 3 spare wires. And so forth. And I've got a couple extra wires in that, which it's actually like a 12 wire bundle because I've got trailer brakes, all sorts of stuff running through that wire. My also it's a catch-all. But so here's the actual spot where the wiring harness comes out of the firewall. Should be one of these ones down here on the bottom. Should be number 30, or it could be this one right here. Do some further research on it, and I'll keep you guys updated. So I'm not really having much luck with finding what wire it is that punches out of the firing wall or out of the firewall. So I'm gonna shortcut it and go behind the firing wall. So I'm gonna run. So here's my spare wires. So I pulled it out of the, because I made a nice little loop. Sorry, that's way too bright for you guys. I made this nice loop of extra wire because I ran 3 extra wires down the back side here. There they actually are right there. Just a little brighter, not too bright. There. So they come down. I need to clean them up since I got rid of my propane tank. They're just dangling here. But so I have 1 wire loom that goes up to the headache rack, which it's got extra wires. Got 1 that runs right there. That's my single lot. So that one runs in the frame right here. And right back here to these extra wires. So since I knew I had extra wires, I took my sending unit wire and ran it down to the back here so I don't have to run extra wire. So I'm looking for my white extra wire. If I can get up here. Here's my white extra wire, so I just need to run that into the cab and punch in before the firewall wire. So I just have to find the brown wire that runs down from the gauge cluster, tap into it, make sure it's the right wire, and then splice it. Well, I don't feel like playing guess and check today in the rain, so I'm just going to take out my gauge cluster so that way I can really just stab the wire in, because I have the wire ran out underneath the firewall, which is actually back there. Well, once I pull the gauge cluster out, I'll pull it up and we'll splice it in, make it simple. Don't have to chase down wires that change, which actually this truck, because it was a propane system, it might not have even had that wire from factory. So I'm just gonna cut the chain, pull the gauge cluster out, which will make it a whole lot simpler for me. I think I've told all my friends. Actual best, or not really the best part, but the biggest talent about being a mechanic is knowing when to be forceful and when not to be forceful. So what I was fighting with was this tab, because this is what controls your speed. So that goes, there's a little wire inside there, which it runs to the train, and it's square. So that cable spins, which spins this reverse part, which is actually what controls your gauge cluster and your miles. Which on this one, it runs a gear set to gear it down or gear it up. I don't know exactly what the gear ratios would be, but to get you your actual mileage, and then based off that mileage, it has a magnet which spins around another magnet or a steel ring, and it, depending on how fast it's moving, because this thing has a spring on it, it can overpower that spring to give you your set speedometer or your set speed, which this one's actually 5 miles an hour fast. So the spring's not stiff enough for how fast the magnet's spinning it around at a certain ratio. But my actual mileage is, so I'm leaving it alone. It doesn't bother me that bad. So now what the next objective is stabbing into which wire it is to make it work. So if I flip over the gauge cluster, this is the fuel sending unit. Well, not the sending unit, but the fuel gauge. So it runs down this little wire, chase it out, which it runs up, loops back down, runs out. So it's that wire right there, top pin. Should I come over here? And this would be actually hooked into it. This is my top pin, which is 2 brown wires. So what I've done is I've cut back some of the coating, so that way I'm going to cut it right here in the center, not up here farther or down back. So here's my white wire, which is already ran up. So I just got to shave off some of the end and put it in a connector. Then I got to cut this, and I'm leaving myself enough wire so if I ever need to hook this back up, like let's say I am overestimating what I believe that is, or I didn't run my wire right here, and for some reason I lose my headlights, I can pull it back apart and reconnect it without too much hassle of like rerunning this pin. This pin's a pain. So I'm just gonna cut it in the center, so that way I can undo it if necessary. And I don't see why I should have to undo it, because I built the wiring harness, so there shouldn't be anything wrong in that sense. I don't know why there's 2. I cannot remember that point. Again, wish I would have took more photos and more videos to actually explain to myself what I did later on, because I thought I'd remember. I don't remember. So I'm just going to play it safe, and if I have to put it back together, I can put it back together. Okay, I got that cut and spliced in. My favorite splices are these ones that have the heat shrink already built in, so I just have to warm it up, and it's completely sealed to the elements. Oh, it's because I built this cab so that way I can literally just come in with a pressure washer and wash all the dirt out. So there's no carpet, it's all rhino lined. Well, not really rhino lined, but a bed liner. And I'll have to put this all back together in reverse order, and then I'll let you guys know if it works or not. Well, got her all back together. Reading the quarter tank. Quarter tank. I'll have to let you guys know if it's accurate or not. Well, have a nice day.